Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got an interesting show lined up for you. Oh, yeah. Connor Stalions has given a statement, and it's quite interesting. And also, we're going to be talking about did he help South Carolina? And I've got another YouTuber that thinks he very much may have, and it's pretty darn interesting. So we're going to get into all of that. But let's start out with Connor Stalions' statement. And this is from Bruce Feldman. It says, Connor Stalions and his attorney have provided statements to The Athletic. And here it says, as he informed the school earlier today, Connor chose to resign because recent stories regarding his time with the University of Michigan have created a distraction for the team. Beckworth said he hopes his resignation will help the team and coaching staff focus on tomorrow's game and the remainder of the season.
Sure, Jan.
Connor also wants to make it clear that to his knowledge, neither Coach Harbaugh nor any other coach or staff member told anyone to break any rules or were even aware of improper conduct regarding the recent allegations of advanced scouting.
Oh, I see nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning.
Here's another statement he said, I love the University of Michigan and its football program. And again, this is provided by The Athletic. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity I've had to work with the incredible student athletes, Coach Harbaugh, and the other coaches that have been a part of the Michigan football family during my tenure. I do not want to be a distraction from what I hope to be a championship run for the team and will continue to cheer them on.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
Well, folks, that's that. He said Jim Harbaugh had no idea. He's off the hook. So what are we even talking about here? Just punish Connor and let him go forward. What? What's the big deal? How could he possibly know? I know he was standing right beside the defensive coordinator. I know he was standing right beside the offensive coordinator, but the guy makes $55 grand as an analyst. He's going to be standing right beside him and telling him what the plays are. Isn't that what those analysts do? I mean, come on. Some of you folks, y'all are just ridiculous. Imagine questioning Jim Harbaugh. Can't believe you. Now, yesterday it was reported that he'd been fired, and I was going to report on that, and I thought that makes no sense. There is no way Michigan fired that guy. He could burn their playhouse down. They're not going to fire him. His resignation makes sense because he's probably thinking, Michigan's my life. This is a guy that wrote a 500-page or 600-page manifesto. He's upset. He's hurting right now. Yeah, he's definitely hurting, Linda. So I would say he's trying to save grace and, doesn't want to see Michigan go down the tubes or anything along those lines because he loves Michigan. I mean, this is a guy that was literally going to every game, stealing signs and bringing them back, basically, allegedly. So, he was planning on taking over Michigan. The guy had a whole plan, and he was working his plan beautifully. I mean, when you know what the plays are, you're like some sort of magician over there on the sidelines. So he was working his way up the ladder for sure. But this is going to be very interesting. I think the Big Ten is going to come out with something, the commissioner, this week. I don't know what type of punishment it's going to be. I don't know whether they're going to keep him out of the Big Ten championship game if they get to it. They got to beat Ohio State and I guess Penn State. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. Can they let them go to that championship game? Can they let them go to the college football playoff, knowing what they know about this year in the first several games and what they did the last, 2 years? This is a team that went from 69% winning percentage to 91 when Connor showed up. So he's a heck of an analyst. You got to give him that. So we'll be following this closely. I think the Big Ten's going to act. I think they're going to meet tomorrow and discuss it, and then I think Monday you'll probably see an announcement, or Tuesday or something along those lines. We'll see. It's kind of tricky what you do with this situation. Now we're going to talk about the South Carolina connection and get into that a little bit. Now, a YouTuber that's got almost 300,000 subscribers actually did a report on this, I believe it was yesterday. And this is a guy that's very connected. He knows former players. He's connected to current players and high school recruits. I mean, this guy's very connected. And if he reports on something, I usually take notice of it. I've been watching him for like a year and a half or almost 2 years, and he breaks news from time to time. And he's usually a guy that doesn't come out first, but a lot of times what he says has credence. So let's see what he's got to say about the South Carolina connection. And if you'll remember, I showed you this the other day, which is the circumstantial evidence that is really stacked up to make you think that South Carolina might very well have been contacted by Michigan to get Tennessee signals. And I'll show you that very quickly. And I've gone over this multiple times, And I'll just very quickly go over this. Direct knowledge. A person with direct knowledge told footballscoop.com that they indicated that Michigan may have attempted to assist opposition of a potential college football playoff opponent to disrupt their path to the playoff. Obviously, that would almost certainly have been South Carolina because they had to play Tennessee, who was number 5 at the time, and then Clemson, which was 6 or 7. So that would have been the pretty obvious one. And again, quickly, Beamer had been fined $25,000 in 2016 for receiving information about his opposition. And then we talked about all these things with South Carolina only scoring 16 points in 2 prior games, which was Missouri and Florida. And then all of a sudden they scored 63 against UT. They scored 9 straight touchdowns. Then they beat Clemson, second top 10 team in a row. They're now 2-6, 3-6. They took down the vaunted Jacksonville State. It was very close until Jacksonville fumbled in the late third or fourth quarter. And then South Carolina, I believe, went on to win. So that was a close game. I thought Jacksonville State might beat them. That would have been a tough press conference for one Shane Beamer. And then lastly, the wristbands just for the Tennessee game. And the wristbands were reported by Holly Rowe of ESPN that it was the first time they had worn the wristbands all year, and she did a full report on it, a little sideline thing during the game, and made kind of a big deal out of it. Now, there is a YouTuber out there that questioned my theory.
How dare you?
In a very vicious and aggressive manner.
No, not really. I can't back that up.
No, he wasn't that bad. He just gave me a little bit of grief. Look, if I was covering South Carolina, I'd be questioning this theory too, I can promise you. But anyway, he did question it, and he said that he did not believe that was the first time they had worn the wristbands. Well, that's something that Mr. Jackpot's going to have to take up with one Holly Rowe of ESPN, because she clearly stated it was, and she had a microphone and everything. So I'm going to go with Holly Rowe on that one.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
And then he also stated that I made the statement, and I did make the statement, that Shane Beamer may not have been the one that received the information, that it might be an analyst or it could be an assistant. And he said, well, that's counter to my argument that he had already received information back in 2016. It's not, and here's why. It does mean, in my mind, that he would look the other way, because the way I think it would have been done would be another analyst got that information, showed up and said, hey, I think I've been watching this team close and I've got the signals and blah, blah, blah. So he could take full credit of it if it was something along those lines. I highly doubt he would have gone up there and said, Mr. Beamer, hey, Michigan just gave us the signals and signs that they stole for Tennessee, and would you like them? You know, they're not going to do it that way. That would be stupid. And you've got to give plausible deniability, a.k.a. Jim Harbaugh. That way he can go out and do the Sergeant Schultz defense that all leaders love to do whenever there's chicanery going on in their organization. And, of course, Jim, again, how could he possibly have seen that guy standing right beside the defensive and offensive coordinators? I mean, come on. And the business of him being over there with Central Michigan wearing their hat and shirt, that's not that big a deal. Plus, he was wearing sunglasses. So, I mean, he couldn't have seen much, unless, of course, there was a camera inside. But I did leave out one important fact, because on that whole list, I ran out of room, and I had made a note of it, and I forgot to tell you folks this. South Carolina's defensive coordinator, Clayton White, actually worked for Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. So there is a connection there as well. So kind of interesting, just yet another little circumstantial evidence that kind of leads you to believe that. But let's take a look and see what one Matt B. Great thinks about this. I think you'll find it pretty interesting.
I'm thinking his side business was to buy tickets at opponents' games from each side of the field, record signals, and give the information to the coaches. Not just his coaches, but everyone who was willing to buy. I feel like Perry Mason. Why does that pique my interest? Because, a little throwback for you, in 2016, Shane Beamer got fined for buying stuff like this. Shane Beamer somehow, some way, obtained illegal, I think it was like game plan footage or gameplay footage, something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but you get the point. Shane Beamer was fined for buying something like this. What am I trying to say here? Shane Beamer was buying illegal information. You get the point. Why is that important to our situation? Because remember, Connor Stallions, he scouted Tennessee before they played South Carolina. And then in the Tennessee-South Carolina game, the South Carolina players were wearing wristbands, and they never wore wristbands all season long. And as we all know and as we all remember, South Carolina beat Tennessee. Interesting, to say the least. Was that the side business? Who knows?
And before you say this is a guy that's not unbiased, you know, he doesn't like South Carolina, etc., This guy will report on his own team. He's a big-time Bama guy, loves his Alabama Crimson Tide. He doesn't care. He'll tell you the good and the bad of whatever team he's talking about, and I'll show you a prime example.
That all these 4- and 5-star recruits that go to Alabama, and in the next year they got brand new Camaros. Come on, man. And this is a different video for a different day, because we could go deep down this rabbit hole, because I know what some of you may be saying. Well, Matt, how does Alabama get away with giving all these 4- and 5-star recruits brand new cars? Guess what, my friend? Nick Saban owns a car dealership. Nick Saban owns all these cars, all these Challengers and all these Camaros and et cetera, the Corvettes. So when he leases them to the players, it's not under the players' names, it's under his name. And that's why Nick Saban, Alabama's smart, because there's nothing on paperwork, there's nothing on the books that says Eddie Jackson, that was a safety at Alabama, owns this Camaro. There ain't nothing on the books, he's just driving it, so it is what it is.
Yeah, so does that sound like somebody that's biased? I can tell you right now, a lot of people, when Matt Be Great puts out a video, they listen.
Well, my broker's E.F. Hutton. And Hutton says, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
So that's just additional circumstantial evidence that makes me believe there is a possibility that the Carolina Gamecocks had an upper hand in that game and knew our signals and our signs. Because 9 straight touchdowns, really? They couldn't score but an average of 8 points.
Oh, it's in the billions. It cannot happen, would not happen.
The previous 2 games against Missouri and Florida, 63, and then they score 31 against Clemson, another college football playoff team. Pretty interesting. So anyway, I did want to cover this today because I've been trying to follow this very closely. This whole thing with Connor Stallions, Michigan, and Ohio State, that big game coming up, Penn State. I mean, there's some games coming up that are going to be huge. I mean, epic games. And Ohio State's back there, man. They're like, oh, I couldn't wait to play this team. And Michigan, of course, what they're thinking is, look, now everybody knows that we did all this. You know what? Let's just go out and beat them anyway. So their hair's going to be on fire because, look, their whole reputation, the whole year, it's the only thing they can control. So they're going to pull together as a team, I would think. Unless they lose, then who knows what's going to happen after that. But this is going to be, I've told you folks, I think this is one of the biggest stories in college football history. I really think it's that big. I think it's huge. And we're probably going to see some rules changes because of it. Probably helmets with microphones, all that stuff's going to happen because this is a nightmare scenario for the Big Ten, the NCAA, for college football as a whole. It's just a mess. And I'm going to keep following it for you. I'm going to keep on this because this is unbelievably interesting. And especially this South Carolina thing, man, I can't take my eyes off it either because if it turns out to be true, man, there's a lot of questions to be answered. But, look, it's a theory. I may be wrong. I'll admit that. But we'll see how it plays out. If you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know. What am I pointing at? Lets me know that you like the content. And if you've not subscribed, it's right here on my right, your left. Just hit that little button. It costs you nothing. That's all you got to do. I mean, come on. Anyway, right over here's most recent video YouTube thinks you'll like. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.